Donald Trump is afraid of interviews. He is afraid of being asked tough questions, and he is afraid of opening his mouth on national television because he knows when he does, it is always bound to backfire. Unless he is appearing with a Fox host who is willing to hold his hand throughout the entire interview, or a comedian on a podcast, Donald Trump will refuse to sit down and answer questions. Because even when he is being helped by a Fox host, even when he is having softballs thrown at him by comedians on a podcast, it still goes terribly. And that is exactly what happened when Donald Trump appeared on the Full Send podcast today. He was being asked the easiest questions possible by some of his biggest supporters, and still he found a way to screw himself so badly, in fact, that his staff and his handlers pulled him out of the interview early. And you could see that the host, the people interviewing him, were shocked that he had to be pulled out early just because the interview was going so badly. And we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button. It really goes a long way in supporting the community that we are building on this show, and really means the world to me. Now let's get into this first deranged clip from the interview.
So we're leading in the polls.
Big time.
We're doing well. We're against somebody that has no clue what's going on. They did something that you guys would relate to because you're into this whole world, but you'd relate to it. 60 Minutes, she gives a horrible answer, and they change the answer. I think it's the biggest scandal in broadcast history. They actually took her answer out and gave her a different answer.
Yeah, I saw that.
After it was shot. And it's turned out to be a scandal. But I think it's the worst thing I've seen in broadcast that I've ever seen. I think it's the biggest scandal in broadcast history. Number one, it's election interference. Number two, they get a license, and it's supposed to be a license based on free press, fair press, and honesty. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, but I think it's a disaster.
Donald Trump has spent the last week attacking Kamala Harris for merely appearing on 60 Minutes, crushing it, and answering their questions. And what he says is the biggest scandal in broadcast history is the fact that they, wait for it, had to edit down the interview so it didn't run over. And do you know why they didn't have to edit down your answers, Donald? Because you didn't give them. You didn't appear. And that is why he is so upset, because the interview not only was a success for Kamala Harris, but strikes the contrast between her and Donald Trump as someone unable to sit down for these interviews. And so now he is attacking 60 Minutes. He's saying that he's going to take away the broadcasting license of CNN. This sounds like a deranged individual to me. I think it does to you as well. But Donald Trump was asked about another piece of media that's been catching headlines a lot lately, and that is Melania's book. And his response was pretty weird.
Melania, she came out with a book.
Yeah.
And it's doing really well.
It's doing great.
Is she like your secret weapon? And how did you first meet her and kind of get her to fall for you?
I wouldn't call it a weapon, but a secret weapon, that's a tough term, but it's pretty interesting. But she's great. She's a wonderful person. She was a great first lady. People love her. Yeah, she wrote a book called Melania, and it's number one, I think, number one or two, and doing great. It's really doing good, and she worked hard on it. And yeah, she loves the country. She wrote something that was very good. I was a little bit nervous before I read it. You know, I said,
whenever the wife is going to talk
you never know.
about you.
I mean, maybe she said bad things, but she didn't.
It seems like Donald has still not read Melania's memoir. Not a shock there. I don't think he knows what was written in it. He still says that he hopes there's nothing bad written about him. Pretty funny, though, that he gets nervous that she's writing a book, not wanting anything bad to be said about him. And of course, this is just one big grift for Donald and Melania. I'm sure she's just trying to cash out before the election is over, and something else might be over after the election as well. I don't want to speculate on their relationship, but certainly a possibility. But of course, this is all it's been about for Donald Trump: grifting, fear-mongering, and lying. And we saw more of that ridiculous lying in this clip right here.
Many rallies in California? This is like a unique one.
No, but I've done them, and we've had a big look. I think that if the voting was legit in California, you know, it's all mail-in ballots, mail-out, mail-in. They're all over the place, like, is it 36 or 38 million ballots? They get mailed. Everybody gets mail. Some people get more than one ballot. You know that, all this. They say that California, automatically you lose. I say that if it was a straight election, I would win in California because I do great with the Hispanics. with the African American population. I'm getting record numbers. Nobody's ever seen that. For a Republican, record numbers. And, I'm doing well. And
These statements from Trump about if he would win California or New York or Illinois can be taken as unserious by some members of the mainstream media. Sometimes they laugh them off and just say he's being ridiculous, instead of pointing out the very important fact that he's just trying to sow doubt about our elections again, and we need to take that serious. This is not some joke he's making. He is trying to sow doubt about the results of this upcoming election so he can continue to attack our democracy, and we have to call him out for this because, of course, that is the plan of the Republican Party and Donald Trump. They don't want to win as much as they want to try to steal votes like they did in 2020. It was their attempt with Donald Trump's fake electors. We've seen this story play out before. We need to be prepared to call it out now. In the same way, we need to be prepared to call out Donald Trump's fear-mongering that we see in this clip right here.
1,000 young children are dead coming through the border. Can you believe that? And you don't even hear about it. The press, the fake news doesn't want to write about it. They want to write if you talk about an election, but they don't want to write about that. 325,000 kids are dead because of Biden and Kamala. Now, we're going to straighten the country out. And we're going to get the bad guys out of our country very fast. The killers, the murderers, the drug dealers, we're going to get them out.
Kamala Harris always so perfectly describes the way Donald Trump talks about the border, not wanting to solve the issue, of course. But what does he want to do? Complain. That's all he wants to do with anything. That is kind of the Republican MO. It's the reason that the MAGA majority in the House has led to the least productive Congress in history, because these are people incapable of governing. We saw Donald Trump on Maria Bartiromo, for God's sakes, being pushed back against a little bit on tariffs, and he just absolutely melted down. He said, oh, I don't really care what the number is. I'll throw anything out because these people don't care about policy. They don't care about governing. They're just trying to throw any bad message out there possible to try to win votes, not understanding the implication of any of the things that they say. And it's moments like this in Donald Trump's interview that drive his handlers crazy, and it's why they had to pull him out early. And you can just see how shocked the fellow interviewers are when this happens. Let's take a look.
Because I see my people are going crazy over there.
Oh, that's it?
At a certain point, you don't mind if they go crazy, but then you say, okay, it's time to go. Time to go, right?
You could see the look on their faces. I think someone said, already? Really? We're done already? It was such a quick interview because Donald Trump, not even with his MAGA supportive friends, with these comedians or whatever these guys are on a podcast, Donald Trump can't even sit down for that long without having to get pulled off by his handlers early. He just can't take the heat of people who already support him. I think that might be a bigger scandal than Kamala Harris just sitting down and having a regular interview with 60 Minutes, but of course the mainstream media won't cover it. But Kamala Harris is trying to get them to pay more attention to Donald Trump's clear cognitive decline, and she perfectly does that in this statement right here.
Let's fast forward to right now. His staff won't let him do a 60 Minutes interview. Every president for the last half century has done one, anyone who's running for president. Everyone has done it, except Donald Trump. He will not debate me again. I put out my medical records. He won't put out his medical records. And you have to ask, why is his staff doing that? And it may be because they think he's just not ready and unfit and unstable and should not have that level of transparency for the American people. There's a real choice in this election.
If the mainstream media won't do their job, if they won't have journalistic integrity to call out Donald Trump, it is upon us to set the table of what the messaging should be in this election. Of course, we have been talking so long and so much about the contrast between Donald Trump being the past we don't want to go back to, and Kamala Harris being the future. It's what I had previously said about the image that'll be so perfect in a contrast on the debate stage between a really just out of it, losing it, deranged Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, which we saw play out. And so now we have to continue to talk about his cognitive decline and talk about his policy failures, because we've seen this book before, we've seen this movie, and it's one we don't want to go back to. And Kamala Harris perfectly talked about that in this clip right here.
He cares about the kinds of people who run the businesses he runs, big developers, billionaires. He's not looking out for middle-class folks. You look at what he is proposing in terms of cutting, if you look at the cost that middle-class families bear, healthcare costs, We have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Black folks are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. Under Project 2025, they would undo that $35 cap. You look at what he is planning to do that is about getting rid of the Department of Education and Head Start programs. Who do you think that's going to affect? So there is, first of all, a danger in terms of understanding. There are two choices in this election, and understanding what Donald Trump intends for middle-class families.
Donald Trump is looking out for Putin, he's looking out for his rich billionaire friends, and he is looking out for himself. Another giant tax cut for the rich and nothing for the middle class. That is what a second Trump term will be, because that's what the first Trump term was. And we have an opportunity to prevent that. We have an opportunity to not go back. And we have to keep talking about that every single day. And we're going to on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.